Hello everyone, this is Andrew. Welcome to Keen on America.
On July 4th, 2026, America will be 250 years old. An anniversary that will, no doubt, be greeted with a mixture of celebration, contemplation, and resignation. In Keen on America, Andrew talks not just about the American past and present, but also speculates on its future. What, Andrew asks, will be the 21st century fate of this now venerable American republic?
Hello everybody, it's late October, just another week in Silicon Valley. The almost $500 billion man, Elon Musk. As we speak, at least on October the 24th, 2025, he's worth $487.5 billion. What's $500 million for a guy like Elon Musk? He's already pressing for his $1 trillion pay plan because he needs, according to him at least, to influence Tesla's future robot army. One wonders what kind of science fiction our friend Elon has been reading, and he continues, even if he had a little spat with his friend Donald Trump, he continues to interfere in government. His latest attack is on NASA leaders over the threat to reconsider their lunar contract with X, one of his companies. Meanwhile, Peter Thiel, another of his friends, they were partners at PayPal in the early days, continues to create controversy about comments he made about the Antichrist. One wonders whether he thinks of himself as the Antichrist or as the man fighting the Antichrist. This is all, of course, grist to the mill of my guest today, Jacob Silverman. He has an important new book out. It's called Gilded Rage, Elon Musk and the Radicalization of Silicon Valley. He is joining us, Jacob, from Brooklyn, New York, the People's Republic. Congratulations, Jacob, on the new book, Gilded Rage. The subtitle is Elon Musk and the Radicalization of Silicon Valley. Is this a book about Elon or just about Elon and his friends like Peter Thiel and David Sachs? Some of them are his friends. They were friends. These people seem to argue, squabble with each other like old hens.
And there can certainly be a transactional nature to their relationships, which is also why
that would be shocking, Jacob. I can never imagine that.
Well, thanks for having me. But that's also why I think they get along with Trump. It's a book about with Musk at the center of it, but it really is about, as you said, Elon and his friends and kind of the greater PayPal mafia and this group that ended up lining up behind Trump during a pivotal period of the 2024 election.
Tell me about this group, this radicalization of Silicon Valley. Hasn't Silicon Valley always been radical? There's always these books about one kind of radicalization or another. What's so unusual about this latest chapter in its radicalization? Trump's love affair or flirtation, which ended rather badly with Trump, Musk's love affair with Trump that ended rather badly. Isn't this just par for the course, or is something different happening?
Well, certainly Silicon Valley is an industry and a region that has always wrapped itself in a certain kind of myth and utopian thinking and style itself as different than a lot of major American industries. I think what's different now, and what I speak to in the title of the radicalization is a right-wing radicalization that reflects one that's happening in other areas of society, that's accompanied by a real assertion of corporate power and money that we haven't necessarily seen before in American political life. We are familiar with money in politics and now have the post-Citizens United era of almost endless corporate money, but we haven't really had a CEO or a captain of industry on stage as the veritable second candidate, as Musk was for a while alongside Trump, or this fusion at a very high level between a number of tech industry interests and Trump, his family, and the White House. I mean, obviously Musk may be out, but there's still a lot of his friends right there.
Yeah, and one of the things that strikes me about some of these characters, not just Thiel and Musk, but people like Mark Andreessen, the multi-billionaire, may not be a trillionaire, but he's making trillionaires, perhaps. Is there rage? I like the title of your book, Jacob, Gilded Rage. Why are these guys so angry? Why don't they just go off, buy an island, and sit on the beach and be happy?
That's one of the puzzling things, I think, and that it does lead to some psychologizing, but it is also something we can look at their own actions and things that they say, since they make a lot of public statements. But why are these guys so angry? It seems like the more money and resources they get and the bigger part of the economy tech becomes, the more dissatisfied they are. And part of the book is about how that rage manifests, and how it seems to manifest partly as this exhaustion with society. I mean, a lot of them talk about the desire to exit or to found new cities. They're not just in their mansions on a hill. They want to, buy islands, as you say, or start new countries even. But that's what I think is also a little different from, say, the rich of the Gilded Age, when, bloody though their hands may have been, they at least built universities and libraries and things kind of that endured beyond themselves. They still mostly walk through the same streets as the rest of us. But right now,
I'm not sure they actually walk. They may have been
or at
driven.
least we're driven through the same streets. Now there's this very antisocial bent, I think, among America's tech elites. I mean, Elon Musk certainly wouldn't settle to be driven. He wants to, dig new tunnels underground so he can avoid people. But and I think that's what's different, is that Musk wants all that money because he says he needs it in order to get to Mars. Like, it's not, oh, I'm worth it, or I've created a lot of wealth for other people. It's that I need that $1 trillion in order to get us to Mars and extend the light of
or
consciousness.
influence Tesla's future robot army, whatever that is. Although, again, robot armies aren't very abstract these days.
Yeah.
There was rumors this week that Amazon was planning on cutting 50% of its workforce. Could we, speaking of Amazon, there are billionaires, multi-billionaires who are happy. I mean, one thinks of the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos, who happily got married in Venice. It was rather distasteful and absurd, and I guess for some of us, pathetic in a way. But why can't they just be like Jeff Bezos? Is he, in a sense, I mean, he's perhaps not the ideal person, Jacob, but is he the model for what successful tech entrepreneurs should be? Go off, marry a voluptuous woman in Venice and enjoy himself traveling around the world wearing sunglasses and looking younger and younger, believing that he can live perhaps forever?
I mean, he certainly seems moderate by comparison, and maybe that is also reflective of, I mean, there's always been a patience in how he worked, and on a long-term time horizon, Amazon wasn't profitable for many years, but it's strange because in another era, Bezos might have seemed like an oligarch and some anti-democratic figure, but he's far superseded now in his the way he acts and his public influence by someone like Musk. But at the same time, Bezos does have profitable relationships with the security state and is a big defense contractor, just like a lot of these other people we talk about. But yeah, as you said, he seems slightly more satisfied with his riches than the others.
You said that you don't try not to psychologize too much in the book, but don't we need to get into these people's head? The book comes with a crown on Musk's head, Elon Musk, and the radicalization of Silicon Valley. But when we get into a guy like Musk's head, wouldn't we find someone who's deeply troubled? His father, there was a recent piece in the New York Times about how his father sexually abused, may have abused Musk himself and many of his brothers and sisters. Here was a boy who was bullied and traumatized, unnatural relations with both his parents, bullied in South Africa when he was growing up. So do we need to see some of this rage? And Thiel also in his own weird way. Are these people who are just simply misfits, geeks, brilliant in their own way, who are now taking on the anger of their childhood, the dysfunctionality of their childhood on the world?
I certainly think that's a big part of it. And, we do know a lot about them now. And, there've been a lot of biographies of Musk. I recently did a multi-part podcast, mostly about Musk's early years for the CBC. And, growing up in an abusive family in an authoritarian apartheid country where you are part of the racial elite, I mean, I think all of that will have a big shaping effect on someone's personality and who they are. And one thing I've argued for Musk's more recent transformation is really just quoting him and saying that his daughter Vivian Wilson coming out as trans and disowning him was a big deal. I mean, this is where he has said the woke mind virus idea comes from. He says the woke mind virus killed my son. Vivian Wilson said that she felt like because Musk has this legion of children he's trying to create, and most of them are via IVF, Vivian said she felt like a child who was or a product that had been ordered up and then rejected. So, this stuff is a big part of shaping his personality and who they are. I've talked about also some of these other tech leads like Bill Ackman, for example, more of a financial elite, but he's talked about how he thought Harvard turned his daughter into a communist. One reason why they hate colleges and these and existing institutions is because they think they're turning their children against them. This is also something that Musk has even talked about, thought that his daughter Vivian was turned into a communist thanks to Los Angeles's private schools.
Yeah, it's tragic, isn't it, Jacob? We should feel terribly sorry for these people.
Well, there is a sad component about it.
I don't know if it's sad. I mean, I don't know if you have any kids. I got 2 kids. They don't like me very much, and I'm not very rich. But in all seriousness, I mean,
it's not being inflicted upon the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make it too sure, but these people do tend, again, they tend to feel very sorry for themselves. Where does that come from?
Yeah, that might be the teenage nerd growing up and still like that a certain lack of emotional maturity to be able to handle their new station in life. But there is, with someone like Musk, there's a palpable insecurity. With Andreessen, he is exhibiting paranoid tendencies quite a bit, saying that he thinks that young people are trying to get jobs at tech companies in order to destroy them from within. I don't know, there's a way in which maybe, if Bezos is a counter, maybe there's something to be said about the fact that he comes from the world of finance. But that I think that also feeds into the greed and the idea that it's never enough, because they are at heart pretty insecure people.
Yeah, the one I've done quite a lot of work on, lots of conversations. We've had shows with people who have written biographies of Peter Thiel and some on Musk, is Thiel's obsession with childish literature, with Lord of the Rings, and his Palantir obsession, and naming all his companies after things from Lord of the Rings. Is Musk the same? Why do they have this weird affection for children's literature? Is it because they missed their childhood, or they never had a childhood?
I certainly think they might have a nostalgic attitude towards childhood, and that it was a simpler time. I mean, Musk is constantly talking about the science fiction of his youth. But, the weird thing with a lot of these guys is, instead of reading sci-fi or fantasy for its allegorical power, or maybe a critique of the world around us or the world of the authors, they see it as a blueprint or something prescriptive. And they want to, that's why Musk has talked about how he wants to call his city on Mars Terminus, from the Isaac Asimov Foundation series, and very much modeled after that, which is a story of apocalypse. The one you want to embrace, but that's the level of literary criticism I guess we're working at. I mean, it's still striking. Like this year, Thiel started another company with Palmer Luckey, the co-founder of Anduril, yet another Lord of the Rings named company, and they started a crypto-related bank just in the last couple of months called Erebor.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, they are truly stuck there, and in the past that way. And Thiel also will still give these speeches, especially at colleges, where he's complaining about the same things he complained about in the Diversity Myth, the book he published 30 years ago. So, whatever intellectual pretenses he might have, he doesn't really go past the grievances of a 22-year-old.
Yeah, my wife was at law school with him, and she always said that, and Sachs, of course, and said that there was a remarkable humorlessness about him back then. I don't think he's changed much.
Yeah, he certainly comes across that way.
Yeah, it's the lack of humor, lack of ability to stand back. I mean, some people have suggested that there's an autistic quality to this generation of tech billionaires. I don't want to minimalize or make light of autism, Jacob, but is this something you've given any thought to?
I think it's a certainly a present element in the culture and probably overrepresented in tech. The difference is also in tech now is autism is really lionized in a way. It's seen, it's described by some people as kind of a superpower or something. It's kind of fetishized on social media, and in that way probably misrepresented. I think also with a CEO or venture capitalist, it's used to kind of explain away, rude or bad behavior, or or explain some kind of where there might be some kind of genius. And sometimes I'm struck by the fact when you listen to someone like Thiel, I don't think he's a good communicator or a good speaker. And then but people sort of explain away, well, this is the kind of socially awkward genius talking, and that's why you don't well, that's why he's half unintelligible.
Yeah, I remember
But
spending
that doesn't
an
really
evening.
it doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, I remember spending an evening a few years ago with Thiel, and I was struck with his very prosaic qualities. I mean, he's clearly a smart guy and a wealthy guy, and this was perhaps before he became himself a kind of antichrist figure for the left. But there's something very ordinary when you meet these people. All this would be entertaining if it wasn't for the politics. I mean, we may even feel a little sorry for them. But as you note in your book, these people have taken a hard right turn. Thiel was always on the hard right. He even back at Stanford Law School, he was a very distasteful conservative. But some of the others have taken this right turn, especially Musk. How do you explain this, and how dangerous is it, Jacob?
Well, I think it's certainly very dangerous because, again, this conflation of corporate and government power, and unchecked on both sides, that we haven't really seen before. I think we have some of the people we've been talking about are died in the wool political animals and have been that really their entire lives, like Thiel and Sachs. But someone like Musk and a lot of his peers, people like Mark Andreessen and his business partner Ben Horowitz, excuse me.
And Ben Horowitz's father was a very distinguished, originally was a Marxist, then became a neocon. So he knows politics inside out.
Very much so. Had that kind of radical transformation a generation before his son. A lot of this really did start manifesting during the Biden administration, during the pandemic. Because I think, for one thing, that's when some of the issues economically started hitting their pocketbooks a little bit more related to the pandemic, like the collapse of the commercial real estate market and people working from home. There was also the rise of social issues like Black Lives Matter or pandemic-related restrictions or Me Too, all of which the tech industry did not handle very well or wasn't interested in kind of entertaining. You had some lip service statements from various tech CEOs, but I think some of them also really didn't like the way that they felt progressive politics was entering the workplace. And I think it started happening rather quickly during that period also, that when they saw the Biden administration going after the crypto industry a bit, which I would simply call like regular enforcement and regulation, but they saw that as a pretty serious attack that they just could not stomach. And that's where I think you saw some of these millionaires and billionaires decide, like, it wasn't enough to just stand in opposition to administration policies. Like, they really had to take over the government in a way that hadn't been done before. And they were able to do it just by pouring in a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a fascinating narrative. I remember the Coinbase guy during COVID banned everyone from talking about politics at work, fired people if they made political commentaries. The leftists might argue, Jacob, that they're just revealing their true spots here, that they were always conservative even if they didn't know it. Others would say that they represent the turning of a liberal Silicon Valley idealism manifested in companies like Google in the beginning into something different. What's your take? Was this inevitable, that really these people, because of their wealth and their interests, were by definition conservative. So maybe COVID wasn't so much an excuse as an inevitability.
Yeah, there's a way in which it was more of an unveiling of what was already there. I mean, I think, I talk about this sort of new authoritarian style. Anyone who I think is empowered with so much money and resources and influence politically, culturally, there's a certain authoritarianism to how they act and the behavior they'll take on and their attitudes. And it's not just nominal Republicans, it's Democrat aligned figures too, like Eric Schmidt. So I think in some ways this was an inevitable outcome. In some cases also, in particular, we can name particular people like the heads of Microsoft or Google, or even someone like Zuckerberg. There is a certain opportunism here, but it's an opportunism that very much aligns with kind of their natural instincts, which is that they want to be capitalists. They want to style themselves as apolitical. And Trump offers a chance for that. For someone like Musk or Thiel or someone or Sachs, Trump really offers also not just patronage politics and a lot of money at stake, but also aligns with some of their cultural and political grievances. But in the end, the effect is kind of the same, I would argue.
Does anyone come out of this with any credibility? You mentioned the CEOs of Microsoft and Google. What about Tim Cook at Apple? He's clearly a progressive, at least in cultural values. He's made that clear on lots of fronts. Is there anyone in Silicon Valley who, and again, Silicon Valley is a term now. I mean, it's not literal. Yeah. I mean, all these people now live in Austin or Miami or Los Angeles. But is there anyone in Silicon Valley you can point to, senior people who you can say, well, you don't have to jump into bed with Trump. You don't have to become a reactionary authoritarianism. Look what X is doing at Y. Is Tim Cook a model here?
Not really. I would say since he went to the White House, it gave Trump some kind of gold object, I believe.
Well, but in all fairness, Jacob, that's what politics is. I mean,
yeah,
they did the same with Biden. They do it with all presidents. Why? There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Well, I think he is part of that opportunist category. I mean, of course, he has tremendous interests in the U.S. and overseas that could be affected by Trump administration policy and tariffs. But but he is still, in my view, more in the kind of Microsoft or Google camp of going along to get along. I don't necessarily expect moral stands from corporate leaders, and I do understand actually their frustration or exhaustion with the social and political mores of the Biden years, where they were expected to take stands on a lot of things that they weren't interested in. Because I don't necessarily think that that's what corporate leaders are for. But in particular in tech, I don't really see anyone distinguishing themselves, I guess, like at least at that very senior level.
What about Reid Hoffman, or up until a few weeks ago, Mark Benioff?
Yeah, Benioff has certainly revealed himself as a full-throated Trump supporter who'd be glad to have his city invaded, or the city he used to live in invaded by federal forces. Reid Hoffman,
which is where I live, by the way, in San Francisco.
Well, good luck.
Thank you, Mark Benioff, for that.
Yeah, Reid Hoffman
invitation.
I expect to see him continue to be involved, but his own sort of political slate isn't clean, and he was an associate of Jeffrey Epstein, and there's renewed focus on Jeffrey Epstein. So I expect every time he kind of sticks his head up politically, someone will mention that.
Long as it's just his head, Jacob.
That's right. I mean, there was an article the other day, I believe, in the Wall Street Journal by Laureen Powell-Jobs, calling out some of this, but I'd have to see more to say that there's some kind of countervailing force.
She's financing the Atlantic. She's financing much of the opposition. What about someone like Reid Hoffman, who is perhaps, again, one of the PayPal mafia, very close, or historically very close to both Thiel and Musk? Is he a model for someone who at least has maintained a degree of moral credibility, even if he is a multi-billionaire?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think in the broader public mind, perhaps, I think of him as the guy who he funded sort of an early disinformation effort in the Alabama Senate race. Was this back in 2016? I think. Like I mean, he is sort of he's a political operator. I mean, often with causes that I agree with more, but I think we're not going to find put sufficient pushback or countervailing kind of liberal forces among tech elites right now. I think we'll find a very active right wing and a kind of more passive center right majority, probably.
You've spoken and written about the apartheid South African roots of the PayPal mafia, Musk, of course, and Sachs in particular, but also Thiel. A year or two ago, I actually had the FT columnist Simon Cooper on the show, talking about the chilling parallels between MAGA America and apartheid South Africa. He wrote a very good piece, an early piece on this called in the FT, Musk, Thiel, and the Shadow of Apartheid South Africa. What do you make of this? Are these guys nostalgic for a white South Africa? Or is there something racist about their Gilded rage? Do they have black friends? The gendered element, of course, is also very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if they have black friends, they or much diversity in their lives at all. I mean, when we talk about the PayPal mafia, it's all men and almost entirely white men.
And with all this weird, or many of them with this weird South African connection, Sachs, who's the crypto, Trump's crypto guy, and Musk and Thiel in particular.
Mm-hmm. And there's also Roloff Botha, who's the head of Sequoia, the most important VC firm, and he's an associate of these guys.
Who was in the news this week because he refused to defend, I think it was the woman who runs Sequoia, who quit because of racist comments by one of the Sequoia partners.
Yeah, Sean Maguire, who in a lot of ways represents like this new consensus of the proudly right-wing jingoistic VC who wants to, invest in military stuff and fight on behalf of America.
Overtly anti-Islamic.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, calling Mamdani a sleeper agent and his father too, and all kinds of wacko things. And I wrote an article about Maguire over the summer for Business Insider and talked to some people who have known him over the years. And some people were really struck by his transformation, but a lot of people did say, like, he has people who agree with him and nothing's really happened to him, because I think the sort of male CEO archetype we're talking about right now, a lot of them do agree with the kind of things he's saying or like the ideas he's putting out there. And as you said, his boss is Roloff Botha, a South African guy whose grandfather, I believe, was the last was Pick Botha, one of the last foreign ministers of apartheid.
Yeah, although to be fair to these people, just because their grandfather was a South African leader doesn't make them. I mean, it doesn't imply that they're racist or apartheid people.
But I think we can take some data points. I mean, Musk in his own life, for example, has had racial discrimination lawsuits, a number of them at Tesla, which black employees there said that there was a pretty racist work environment and filed a class action lawsuit. I think growing up in a highly engineered, chauvinist, racist society until for your entire childhood, at least has some effect on a person. And I don't think it's a coincidence that these folks have come together in this way and have ascended in a similar way. Yeah,
and one of the more chilling aspects, I'm not sure if you got this in your book, it may have come out a bit late, is Musk's obsession now with the UK and his association with a guy called Tommy Robinson, who's essentially a right-wing thug. I mean, you can't dress him up as anything else. He makes Donald Trump look like Isaiah Berlin. I mean, what is Musk doing in supporting overt racists in the UK? What's his obsession with that? Is it because he somehow believes that Europe is about to be invaded by an Islamic horde of some sort or other?
Well, he seems to, strange as it is. I mean, a lot of these guys do seem sincere in their beliefs, even when they're spouting nonsense or things that just aren't true. Like Sean Maguire, I just mentioned, thinks that there are Antifa cells in the US that are committing terrorist attacks. And Musk, I actually watched his speech that he gave remotely to a Tommy Robinson rally last month.
Yeah, that was the 150,000 thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of chilling because he's saying a lot of what he said here in the US, which is that there are migrants on the loose, they're coming to you. He said I don't have the exact line in my mind, but something like violence is coming to you whether you like it or not. Prepare yourself. I mean, just telling the people there that there are violent hordes of migrants who are going to come and attack them in the English Midlands or wherever they are. But it's very much like the kind of story he was telling here in the U.S. in the lead up to the election, or it sounded a bit like the Great Replacement theory that he's embraced also. And that seems to be what he's interested in doing now, as being this kind of agitator via Zoom at all these political rallies. I mean, he's done this in the UK, Germany, Italy, and perhaps elsewhere that I don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, he's got this association with the AFD as well. It's chilling, but also it's so odd. I mean, he's running about 4 or 5 different companies. He's revolutionizing numbers of industries, the space industry, the car industry, and yet he has time to waste getting engaged with some thug like Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, you always wonder how these people have so much time for that.
Well, I guess they don't sleep. I mean, there's the drug element as well, Jacob. Do you address that in the book? I mean, I know a lot of people who used to know Musk. They say that at one point he was actually a reasonably decent, coherent fellow, but he's been made insane by drug use. Do you get into that in Gilded Rage?
A little bit. I mean, it's come to the surface enough that it's been reported on in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and that it was a concern to the board at Tesla, that Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, said, "Why don't you come to my Hawaiian island and dry out for a little bit?" And Musk declined. I think also, if you just look at a video of Musk being interviewed 10 years ago, there is a difference. And it's not just aging or anything like that. He sounds different. His interests, of course, are different. His attitude is different. So, and also we can look at his posting patterns. I mean, he's up all night, as you referred to. And there's enough reporting out there about his drug use and the concerns about his personal behavior of people around him, much less like what we actually see in public when he's insulting people or spreading racist paranoia, or putting or firing one of his own employees on X. Like, these are not the habits of a stable person. And
to put it mildly, to put it politely.
And if we really get into it, like, I think sometimes about the former CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh.
Yeah, we've done a couple of shows on him.
And like that is someone who ascended to the heights of became a tech billionaire, and then got way into drugs, in the party scene, and went a little crazy and died because of it. And I think that's
burnt up, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah. And I think that's the path you wonder if, on a much greater scale, perhaps, if someone like Musk is on.
Yeah, it's the hubris of too much money. What do you make of some of these other characters, these bizarre ideological characters in Silicon Valley, like Curtis Yarvin, who is overtly calling for an end of democracy and the restoration of some sort of monarchy? Not that, of course, America ever had a monarchy. At least Yarvin has an element of humor. He doesn't seem to take himself quite as seriously as some of the others. But what politically is happening that you have serious people like Mark Andreessen, grown-ups, who are listening and taking guys like Curtis Yarvin seriously?
Well, I think someone like Yarvin flatters their sense of being intellectuals. I think Yarvin is not a very good writer, but he drops a lot of references and kind of creates this whole structure of terms and ideas that flatter, that kind of make their anti-democratic ideas be dressed up in pseudo-intellectual ideas, like this concept of the cathedral and that he talks about. I think someone like Yarvin is actually similar to Musk in a way, in that his extreme example creates a permission structure for the other people who follow him to say pretty outre things and to advocate for the end of American democracy. There's nothing that anyone in tech could really do or say that's as crazy as something that Musk has done. And similarly, Yarvin helped kind of pave the way and have this sheen of rigor, of intellectual rigor and thought behind whatever he was talking about, when really he just wants a king. And I think that's the appeal for them. And they like sponsoring him and sort of dragging him around like a mascot or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of kings, Jacob, and American democracy, or the crisis of American democracy, you wrote a very powerful piece, I thought, last week in the New York Times, an op-ed on Teapot Dome Watergate. There's nothing compared to this, which is a critique of the Trump family's World Liberty Financial making it clear that the Harding Teapot Dome scandal is nothing compared with what's happening now. How does Trump fit into this? Is it coincidental that these people, the Andreessens, the Musks, the Thiels, the Yarvins, the Saxes, are all playing in a game, I don't know, on a play, a narrative that Trump himself is dominating?
Well, I think what we did learn from Musk kind of leaving the White House and having a bit of a rift with Trump is that power still ultimately resides in the executive. Yeah, we've had this incredible outgrowth of corporate power and these guys trying to style themselves as kings, but ultimately Trump is in charge, at least for now. But at the same time, he benefits a lot from the collaboration and loyalty of these people. And I think it is notable that there wasn't a lot of pushback or even retaliation against Musk. Yes, he lost the EV mandate, which matters for him, but he's still getting new contracts with the government and through XAI, for example, which hadn't had government contracts before. So, Trump practices a kind of transactional patronage politics, and I think that suits these guys pretty well. That suits kind of the VC and tech CEO mindset, and they can try to play to that, whether opportunistically or because they share certain interests and grievances with him.
So finally, Jacob, what can we all do? There was a time a year or two ago where people in my neighborhood of San Francisco stopped buying Teslas. I'm not sure that's very effective. These people are so wealthy, so powerful. I mean, whether or not, as I said, even without his $1 trillion new deal with Tesla, Musk is already worth almost $500 billion, $500 billion. He has so much money, so much power. What can anyone do here? I had Tim Wu on the show earlier this week. Of course, he was very much bound up with the Biden administration. Talked to him about why guys like Musk are so rageful. There's a story that that he was angry because he wasn't invited to an EV event that the Biden people put on early in the administration. But is it politics as usual? Can we trust the Dems to fight back against your gilded rage, against the Musks and Thiels and Saxes of the world? Should people stop buying Teslas? Should they leave America? What can we do, ordinary people?
It's hard to do much on an individual level. I mean, I understand the appeals of conscious consumerism, but I mean, in the case of Tesla, that is a real vulnerability for Musk. The sales are plummeting here and in Europe, and the Chinese cars are better and cheaper.
Well, you can't buy them in the US.
Yeah, you can't get them in the US, but if they get into European markets, it's a big issue for Musk. So I think, as rich and powerful as he is, there are some tensions and contradictions within his business empire, obviously within his personal life. Like it could collapse in some way or another very spectacularly. On an individual level, I think we have a lot of fighting back and rebuilding of essential democratic institutions to do, or figuring out which ones we want to rebuild. And that won't happen necessarily at the hands of the Democrats, who are either divided or have other tech moguls that they like. And I think we are still in the midst of this rolling crisis, and we won't really know what to do until we get out of it.
So you're a Mandami guy. I know you're in the People's Republic of Brooklyn, but is somebody like Mandami? I assume he's no great friend of any of these tech tycoons.
Yeah, I certainly like him, and I mean, but I think someone like him, what's nice is there's no question I think that he opposes that kind of tech power, but I think he is someone who has succeeded to this point because he is focusing on cost of living and day-to-day issues for people, and not necessarily just pounding the stump against powerful corporate forces above us.
And there you have it. Jacob Silverman's new book, Gilded Rage, Elon Musk and the Radicalization of Silicon Valley, is out. It's the latest chapter. I'm not sure how much worse it can get, Jacob, but congratulations on the new book, getting lots of energy, lots of attention. It's an important book. Thank you again.
Thank you.